What if I told you that one wedding, one single moment, turned a guy's entire life upside down? Picture this, a wedding photographer, snapping shots of love and laughter, suddenly finding himself caught in a moment so wild, so unexpected, that it made him question everything. His career, his heart, even his future. Sounds like something out of a rom-com, right? But this isn't fiction. This is real, raw, and so gripping you're gonna want to stick around until the very end to find out what happened. So grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into the story of how one bride changed everything for a guy who thought he'd seen it all. You're not just watching a video, you're about to go on a journey with me, and trust me, it's one you won't forget. Let me paint the scene for you. Weddings are magical, aren't they? The flowers, the vows, the way everyone's just a little bit drunk on love and champagne. For our guy, let's call him Jake, weddings were his bread and butter. He was the guy behind the lens, capturing those perfect moments. The tear in the groom's eye, the bride's glowing smile, the awkward uncle tearing up the dance floor. Jake had shot hundreds of weddings, each one a blur of tulle and tuxedos, each one leaving him with a paycheck and a few good stories. He was good at his job, maybe even great. Brides loved him, grooms high-fived him, and he had a knack for making everyone feel like their big day was straight out of a fairy tale. But here's the thing about Jake. He didn't believe in fairy tales. Not for himself at least. Love. Sure, it looked nice through his camera, but he wasn't chasing it. He was 32, single, and perfectly fine with his life of late-night edits and solo pizza nights. That is, until her. One bride. One wedding. One moment that flipped his world like a pancake on a hot griddle. And no, I'm not gonna spoil it yet, but let's just say this bride wasn't like the others. She had something that made Jake's steady hands shake and his cool professional vibe crumble. You're curious, aren't you? Good. That's exactly where I want you, because by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly what went down and why it changed Jake forever. Now, let's talk about you for a second. You're here because you love a good story, right? Maybe you're a hopeless romantic, dreaming of your own wedding day, or maybe you're just here for the drama, ready to gasp at the twists and turns. Either way, I see you. I know you're sitting there, maybe with your phone propped up or your laptop on your lap, wondering if this video's worth your time. Let me make you a promise. It is. This isn't just another YouTube video. This is a roller coaster of emotions, a puzzle you're gonna want to piece together with me. I'm not here to waste your time with fluff or clickbait. I'm here to take you inside Jake's world, to make you feel what he felt, to make you wonder what you'd do if you were in his shoes. And here's my master move to keep you hooked. I'm gonna give you just enough to keep you guessing, just enough to make you lean in and say, okay, I have to know what happens next. By the time we're done, you're gonna be hitting that like button, sharing this with your friends, and maybe even commenting, what the heck just happened? Because this story? It's that good. So, stick with me, because I'm talking directly to you, and I'm not letting you go until we get to the bottom of this. Let's set the stage a bit more, because the vibe of this story is everything. Imagine a warm summer evening in a small town somewhere in the Midwest. The kind of place where everyone knows each other, where the local diner serves the best pie, and where weddings are the event of the season. Jake rolled into this town for a gig, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, ready for another day at the office. The venue was stunning. A rustic barn decked out with fairy lights, mason jars, and wildflowers. The bride and groom were young, crazy in love, and the guest list was packed with people ready to party. Everything was textbook perfect, the kind of wedding Jake could shoot in his sleep. But there was something in the air that day, something electric. Maybe it was the way the bride's laughter carried across the lawn, or the way her eyes seemed to hold a secret. Jake couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt it. A pull, a spark, something that made his heart beat just a little faster. He chalked it up to too much coffee, but deep down, he knew something was different. This wasn't just another job. This was the start of something bigger, something that would make him question everything he thought he knew about love, life, and what it means to say, I do. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, who's this bride and what's her deal? I'm gonna give you a little tease, but I'm not spilling all the beans just yet. The bride, let's call her Emily, wasn't your typical blushing bride. Sure, she was gorgeous, with a dress that looked like it was made for a magazine cover, but there was more to her than that. Emily had this energy, this way of moving through the world that made everyone around her feel alive. She wasn't just getting married, she was living every second of that day, soaking it in like it was her last. Jake noticed it right away, the way she seemed to see right through people, the way she made everyone feel like they mattered. But there was something else too. A hint of mystery, a shadow behind her smile that Jake couldn't quite capture in his photos. Was she nervous? Was she hiding something? Or was there something about this wedding that wasn't as picture-perfect as it seemed? Jake didn't know, but he was about to find out. And you, my friend, are about to find out with him. This isn't just a story about a wedding. It's a story about what happens when life throws you a curveball and you have to decide whether to swing or let it pass. Here's where things get really interesting. Jake's job was simple. Take the photos, make the couple look good, go home. But as the day went on, something shifted. Emily kept pulling him into moments, asking him to take candid shots, joking with him about the chaos of the day, treating him like he was part of the celebration instead of just hired help. At first, Jake thought she was just being friendly, but then there was this one moment. A glance, a touch, a split second that felt like it lasted forever. It was like the whole world slowed down, and for the first time in years, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A spark. Not just attraction, but something deeper, something that scared him and thrilled him all at once. He tried to shake it off, to focus on his work, but Emily was like a song stuck in his head, impossible to ignore. And then, just when he thought he had it under control, something happened. Something so unexpected, so out of left field, that it left Jake reeling and the entire wedding in chaos. What was it? Oh, you're gonna have to keep watching to find out, because this is where the story takes a turn you won't see coming. So, here we are, you and me, standing on the edge of this crazy story. You're probably wondering what's next. What could possibly have happened to make a wedding photographer rethink his entire life? Was it a scandal? A secret? A moment of pure magic? I'm not gonna lie. This story has it all. Love, drama, heartbreak, and maybe even a little bit of hope. But more than that, it's a story about what happens when you least expect it, when life hands you a moment that changes everything. You're invested now, aren't you? I can feel it. You're picturing Jake, camera in hand, caught in a whirlwind he never saw coming. You're wondering about Emily, about what makes her so special, so unforgettable. And you're dying to know what went down at that wedding. Well, my friend, you're in the right place. Keep watching, because the answer is coming, and it's gonna blow your mind. But for now, let's leave it here, with Jake standing in the middle of that barn, heart racing, camera forgotten, staring at a moment that's about to change his life forever. What did Emily do? And why did it make Jake want to say, I do? Stick around because you're about to find out. Right there in the middle of that rustic barn glowing with fairy lights, Jake stood frozen, his camera hanging limp at his side, his heart hammering like it was trying to break free. The moment that had just unfolded wasn't something he could have prepared for. Not in a million weddings. Emily, the bride, had done something. Something that wasn't just a fleeting glance or a casual joke, but a gesture so bold, so loaded with meaning, that it felt like the universe had pressed pause on everything else. The music, the chatter, the clinking of champagne glasses. It all faded into a distant hum as Jake's mind raced to make sense of what had just happened. Was it a mistake? A misunderstanding? Or was Emily trying to tell him something? Something that could unravel the entire day? You're probably leaning in right now, wondering what she did, desperate to know why it hit Jake so hard. I'm not gonna spill it just yet, because this story is like a wedding cake. Layered, rich, and best savored one bite at a time. Let's step back a bit, dig into Jake's world, and peel back the layers of this small-town wedding that's about to become the talk of the town. Stick with me because the deeper we go, the more you're gonna realize that this isn't just about a bride and a photographer. It's about secrets, choices, and the kind of love that doesn't follow the script. Jake wasn't always the guy who hid behind a camera, dodging bouquet tosses and small talk about his own love life. Back in his early 20s, he was a dreamer, the kind of guy who believed in big love and bigger risks. He grew up in a sleepy suburb outside Chicago, where his mom ran a bakery and his dad fixed cars, and every summer felt like a chance to chase something new. Photography started as a hobby. Snapping Polaroids of his friends at bonfires, capturing the way the lake looked at sunset. But after a messy breakup in college, Jake poured himself into his craft, turning his broken heart into a portfolio that landed him gigs. Weddings became his thing because they were safe. Love was the star of the show, but it wasn't his to lose. By the time he hit 32, he'd built a solid reputation, a booked calendar, and a wall around his heart that no bridesmaid's flirtation could crack. But there was something about this wedding, this town, this bride, that was chipping away at that wall. The town itself felt like a character in this story. Maplewood, a place where gossip spread faster than wildfire and everyone had an opinion about the couple tying the knot. Emily and her groom, Ryan, were local royalty of sorts. High school sweethearts who'd come back to their hometown to say their vows. On paper, they were perfect. Ryan, the charming lawyer with a megawatt smile, and Emily, the free-spirited artist who seemed to light up every room. But Jake, with his photographer's eye for detail, noticed cracks in the facade. Moments when Ryan's smile tightened, or when Emily's laughter felt just a little too forced. Was it just wedding day jitters, or was there something brewing beneath the surface? You're wondering, aren't you? I can feel your curiosity buzzing through the screen, and I promise we're gonna get there. But first, let's meet a few more players in this drama. Enter Sarah, the maid of honor, who was as much a whirlwind as Emily was a spark. Sarah was the kind of friend who knew everyone's secrets and wasn't afraid to spill them over a glass of rose. She'd been buzzing around the wedding all day, organizing bridesmaids, flirting with the bartender, and throwing Jake knowing glances that made him wonder what she was up to. Sarah and Emily went way back. Best friends since middle school, the kind of bond that could survive anything, or so it seemed. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was watching Emily a little too closely, like she was waiting for something to go wrong. There was a moment, early in the day, when Jake caught Sarah whispering to Emily in a corner, their heads bent together, Emily's face pale and serious. He didn't hear what they said, but the way Sarah's hand gripped Emily's arm told him it wasn't just a pep talk. Was Sarah protecting her friend, or was she stirring the pot? And then there was Ryan's best man, Mike, a loud, larger-than-life guy who seemed to think the wedding was his personal stand-up comedy show. Mike was all laughs and backslaps, but Jake noticed the way his eyes followed Emily, the way he lingered a little too long when he hugged her during the group photos. Was Mike just a harmless flirt, or did he know something about Emily and Ryan that Jake didn't? These little moments, these fleeting glances and hushed conversations, were starting to pile up, and Jake couldn't help but feel like he was photographing a puzzle instead of a party. You know that feeling when you're watching a movie and you can sense the twist coming, but you're not quite sure how it's gonna hit? That's where we're at right now, and trust me, you're gonna want to keep watching to see how these pieces fit together. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about the wedding itself, because it wasn't just any wedding. It was the kind of event that had Maplewood buzzing for months. Emily and Ryan's love story was the stuff of local legend. They'd been together since they were 16, the couple everyone envied, the ones who made it through college and long distance and all the things that tear young love apart. When Ryan proposed last year, the whole town celebrated like it was their own engagement. But Jake, who'd seen enough weddings to know that every love story has its shadows, couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story. He'd overheard snippets of gossip while setting up his gear, whispers about Emily's time in New York, where she'd spent a year chasing her art career before coming back to Maplewood. Some said she'd changed, that the city had made her restless, that she wasn't the same small-town girl who'd left. Others swore Ryan had been acting strange lately, spending late nights at the office, dodging questions about his work. Jake tried to stay out of it. He was just the photographer after all, but the more he saw, the more he felt like he was being pulled into something bigger. And then there was that moment with Emily, the one that stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't just what she did. It was the way she looked at him when she did it, like she was seeing him, really seeing him for the first time. It was a look that made him feel exposed, vulnerable, like she'd cracked open a part of him he'd kept locked away. You're dying to know what it was, I can tell. Was it a word? A touch? A secret shared in the heat of the moment? I'm keeping you on the edge of your seat for a reason, because this story is about to take a turn that'll make your jaw drop. Here's where things get even juicier. There was another layer to this wedding, something Jake didn't know about until later in the day. Emily's family had a history. The kind of small-town drama that gets passed down like an heirloom. Her parents' marriage had been a scandal back in the day. Her mom, a city girl, had run off with Emily's dad, a local farmer, only to leave him years later for reasons no one talked about. Emily grew up in the shadow of that story, and some said it made her wary of love, even with Ryan. Jake didn't know any of this when he arrived, but he started to piece it together as the day went on, catching bits of conversation between Emily's aunts, noticing the way her dad's face tightened when Ryan's name came up. Was Emily's family hiding something about her relationship with Ryan? And what did it have to do with the moment that had Jake's head spinning? Then there was the subplot of Jake's own past creeping in. See, Jake hadn't always been so guarded. There was a girl years ago, who'd broken his heart so badly he swore he'd never let himself fall again. Her name was Lily, and though he hadn't thought about her in ages, something about Emily, her laugh, her fearlessness, brought those memories flooding back. It was messing with his head, making him question whether he was reading too much into Emily's actions or if there was really something there. You're feeling it now, aren't you? The tension, the questions, the need to know what's gonna happen next. This wedding isn't just a backdrop, it's a pressure cooker, and the lid's about to blow. So here we are, back in that barn, with Jake standing there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of Emily's move. The party's still going strong. Guests are dancing, the DJ's playing some cheesy 80s hit, and no one else seems to notice that something's shifted. But Jake knows. He can feel it in his bones. Whatever Emily did, it wasn't random. It was a spark, a challenge, maybe even a cry for help. And now Jake's got a choice. Play it safe, keep his head down, and finish the job, or lean into the chaos and see where it takes him. You're wondering what he's gonna do, aren't you? You're wondering if Emily's gonna do something else, if Ryan's gonna notice, if Sarah or Mike or someone else is gonna throw a wrench into this already wild day. I'm not gonna lie, this story's only getting started, and the twists are gonna keep coming. But for now, let's leave Jake right there, caught in the eye of the storm, with Emily's gaze still burning in his mind and a decision looming that could change everything. What's her secret? What's she hiding? And what's it gonna cost Jake to find out? Keep watching, because the next part's gonna hit you like a runaway bride. The air in the barn felt thicker now, charged with something Jake couldn't name but could feel crawling up his spine. Emily's moment, whatever it was, that bold heart-stopping gesture, had left him rattled, standing there like a deer caught in headlights while the wedding swirled around him. The dance floor was packed, the DJ blasting a crowd pleaser that had everyone from the flower girl to the great aunt swaying. But Jake's world had narrowed to the echo of Emily's eyes, the weight of what she'd done. It wasn't just a look or a touch, it was a note, slipped into his camera bag when no one was watching, her handwriting sharp and urgent. Meet me by the oak tree at midnight. Don't tell anyone. Jake's fingers trembled as he read it again, hidden behind his tripod, his mind screaming questions. Why him? What did she want? Was this some kind of prank, or was Emily about to drag him into something he couldn't walk away from? The note was a spark, and this wedding was a powder keg, ready to explode. You're feeling it, aren't you? That itch to know what's going on, to figure out what Emily's hiding and why she's pulling Jake into her orbit. Hold on tight, because this story's about to take a turn that'll leave you gasping, with stakes higher than a wedding cake and a twist that'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew. Let's dive deeper into this Maplewood madness, because the clock's ticking toward midnight, and Jake's about to step into a storm he never saw coming. Jake stuffed the note into his pocket, his pulse racing like he'd just run a marathon. He tried to focus, snapping photos of the cake cutting, the bouquet toss, but his eyes kept darting to Emily. She was back in bride mode, laughing with Ryan, twirling on the dance floor, but there was something off, a tightness in her smile, a glance toward Jake that felt like a secret shared. He wanted to believe it was nothing, that he was reading too much into a moment, but that note was real, and it was burning a hole in his pocket. As the night wore on, the subplots of this wedding started to tangle like fairy lights in a storm. Sarah, the maid of honor, was acting stranger by the hour. Jake caught her arguing with Mike, the best man, in a corner of the barn, their voices low but heated, Sarah's hands flailing as Mike shook his head. What were they fighting about? Was it about Emily, or was there another secret simmering under the surface? Then there was Ryan, the golden boy groom, who seemed to be unraveling in slow motion. Jake noticed him knocking back whiskey at the bar, his tie loosened, his eyes scanning the crowd like he was looking for someone, or something. When Ryan's gaze landed on Emily, there was a flicker of something dark. Jealousy, maybe, or fear. Jake's photographer instincts were screaming that this wasn't just a happy ever after kind of day. Maplewood's picture-perfect wedding was starting to look like a house of cards, and Emily's note was the gust of wind threatening to bring it all down. You're wondering what's in that note, aren't you? What could possibly make a bride risk everything to meet a stranger in the middle of the night? Keep watching, because the answer's coming, and it's gonna hit harder than you expect. Here's where things take a wild left turn. As Jake was packing up his gear, trying to decide whether to show up at that oak tree, Sarah cornered him by the dessert table. Her face was flushed, her eyes sharp with something that looked like panic. You need to stay away from her, she hissed, her voice low enough that the nearby guests couldn't hear. Jake froze, his hand still on his camera bag, the note practically pulsing in his pocket. What are you talking about? He asked, playing dumb, but Sarah wasn't buying it. She leaned in closer, her breath smelling of wine, and said, Emily's not herself. She's making mistakes, and you're gonna get caught in the crossfire. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Sarah spun away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving him with more questions than answers. What did Sarah know? Was she trying to protect Emily, or was she covering her own tracks? Jake's head was spinning, but the real bombshell came an hour later, when he overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear. Hiding behind a stack of hay bales, adjusting his lens, he caught Mike talking to one of Ryan's cousins, a guy named Tyler. "She's gonna ruin everything," Mike said, his voice thick with frustration. "If Ryan finds out what she's planning, it's over." Tyler muttered something about New York and that guy, and Jake's stomach dropped. Was Emily planning something? Was there someone else, someone from her past, tied to her time in the city? The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was blurry, like a photo out of focus, and Jake was running out of time to figure it out. "You're on the edge of your seat now. I can feel it," picturing Jake caught in this web of secrets, wondering if he's about to become a hero or a fool. The stakes were climbing higher, and Jake could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him. This wasn't just about a note or a moment anymore. It was about a bride who might be running from her own wedding, a groom who might be hiding his own demons, and a town full of people who seemed to know more than they were saying. Jake's own past was creeping in, too, messing with his judgment. That girl, Lily, who'd broken his heart all those years ago. She'd been a risk-taker, just like Emily, the kind of person who made you feel alive but left you in pieces. Was Jake falling for the same trap, letting Emily's spark pull him into chaos? He didn't know, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was a turning point, not just for Emily and Ryan, but for him. The clock was inching closer to midnight, and the oak tree was calling. Should he go? Should he confront Emily, demand answers, or walk away and pretend he never saw that note? Every choice felt like a step toward disaster, but doing nothing wasn't an option either. And then, just when he thought he'd seen it all, the twist hit like a lightning bolt. As Jake was slipping out of the barn, ready to make his decision, he saw Emily, alone in her wedding dress, standing by the bar, holding a phone to her ear. Her voice was a whisper, but Jake caught the words that stopped him cold. "I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving tonight." Leaving? The wedding? Ryan? Maplewood? Or something else entirely? Jake's heart slammed against his ribs, and suddenly, the note in his pocket felt like a ticking time bomb. Let's pause right there, with Jake standing in the shadows, Emily's words ringing in his ears, and the midnight meeting looming like a storm cloud. You're probably screaming at your screen right now, wanting to know who Emily was talking to, what she's running from, and what Jake's gonna do about it. This wedding, this perfect small-town celebration, is falling apart at the seams, and Jake's caught in the middle, holding a secret that could change everything. Is Emily about to ditch her own wedding? Is Ryan hiding something that's pushing her away? And what's Sarah's deal, warning Jake like she's guarding a vault of secrets? The subplots are weaving together, the tension's building, and Maplewood's gossip mill is about to go into overdrive. But we're not at the climax yet, my friend. This story's got more layers to peel back, more surprises to unpack. Jake's got a choice to make, and it's gonna cost him. Maybe his heart, maybe his sanity, maybe something even bigger. You're invested now, I know you are, picturing that oak tree, wondering what's waiting for Jake in the dark. Keep watching, because the next part's gonna take this roller coaster to a whole new level, and you won't believe what happens when the clock strikes midnight. The night air was cool against Jake's skin as he slipped out of the barn, Emily's whispered words, "I'm leaving tonight," looping in his mind like a song he couldn't shake. The note in his pocket, with its cryptic call to meet her by the oak tree at midnight, felt heavier with every step he took toward the edge of the property. Maplewood's wedding was still in full swing behind him, the music and laughter spilling out into the darkness, but Jake was stepping into a different world, one where secrets were about to unravel and choices would change everything. His heart was a tangle of nerves and curiosity, torn between the safe, predictable life he'd built behind his camera and the pull of Emily's mystery. Who was she talking to on that phone? What was she running from? And why, out of everyone in that crowded barn, had she chosen him to drag into this? The old oak tree loomed ahead, its gnarled branches silhouetted against the starry sky, and as the clock ticked closer to midnight, Jake knew he was walking toward the climax of a story that had already turned his world upside down. You're right there with him, aren't you? Pulse racing, questions buzzing, wondering how this small-town wedding turned into a drama that's got you glued to your screen. Let's dive into the final act, where truths come to light, hearts break and mend, and one last twist will leave you reeling. This is the moment you've been waiting for, So let's see what happens when Jake steps under that tree and faces the bride who changed everything. As Jake reached the oak, the world seemed to hush, the distant party fading into a soft hum. Emily was already there, her wedding dress glowing faintly in the moonlight, her face a mix of determination and fear. She turned as he approached, and for a moment, they just stood there. Two strangers caught in a moment that felt bigger than both of them. "You came," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, and Jake nodded, holding up the note like a question. "What's this about, Emily? What's going on?" She took a deep breath, and then the dam broke. Emily wasn't just a bride having cold feet. She was a woman unraveling a life she'd outgrown. She told Jake about New York, about the year she'd spent chasing her art, falling in love with a painter named Luca who'd shown her a world of passion and possibility. She'd come back to Maplewood for Ryan, thinking she could slip back into her old life, but the closer the wedding got, the more she realized she was living a lie. Ryan wasn't the villain, he was kind, steady, everything Maplewood wanted for her, but he wasn't her future. That phone call Jake overheard? It was to Luca, who was waiting in a car just outside stashed away, ready to take her out of town. Tonight was the night, Emily said, the night she was leaving, not just the wedding, but Maplewood, her life, everything. Jake listened, his mind reeling, as Emily confessed that she'd seen something in him. A spark, a kindness, that made her trust him with her secret. "I needed someone to know the truth," she said, tears in her eyes. "I needed someone to see me. You're feeling the weight of this, aren't you? The heartbreak, the courage, the impossible choice Emily's facing. But this is just the beginning of the climax, because the truth is about to ripple through the wedding like a shockwave." Before Jake could respond, a shadow moved in the darkness. Sarah, the maid of honor, stepping out from behind the tree, her face a mask of fury and betrayal. "You're really doing this?" she spat, her voice shaking. "After everything, you're throwing it all away?" Sarah's subplot, that undercurrent of tension Jake had sensed all day, exploded into the open. She'd known about Luca, had begged Emily to let him go, to choose the safe, happy life with Ryan. Sarah wasn't just protecting her friend. She was protecting the image of Maplewood's perfect couple, the fairy tale she'd helped build. But there was more. Sarah confessed she'd been the one leaking whispers to Ryan, hoping to force Emily's hand, to make her stay. It was a desperate move, born of love and fear, but it had only pushed Emily further away. Jake stood caught between them, his heart pounding, as Emily faced her oldest friend. "I can't live for everyone else anymore," Emily said, her voice steady now. "I have to be honest, even if it hurts." The confrontation was raw, electric, and Jake could feel the weight of every word. But then, another figure emerged. Ryan, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. He'd followed Sarah, sensing something was wrong, and now he'd heard everything. The barn, the party, the fairy lights. It all felt a million miles away as Ryan stared at Emily, the woman he loved, and saw the truth in her eyes. "You're holding your breath now, picturing this showdown."
Under the oak tree, wondering if this is the end of Maplewood's golden couple or the start of something new. The climax hit like a tidal wave. Ryan didn't shout or storm off. He just stood there, broken, and asked, "Were you ever going to tell me?" Emily's tears fell as she nodded, explaining that she'd tried, that she'd wanted to protect him from the pain. But Ryan, in a moment of gut-wrenching honesty, admitted his own truth. He'd felt her pulling away, had buried himself in work to avoid facing it, had let their love become a performance. "I wanted to be enough," he said, his voice cracking, and Jake felt his own heart ache, remembering Lily, the girl who'd left him with the same kind of emptiness. The resolution began to take shape as Emily and Ryan faced their unraveling love, not with anger, but with a painful, fragile honesty. Emily chose to leave, to go to Luca, to chase the life that called her. Ryan let her go, not because he wanted to, but because he loved her enough to set her free. Sarah, devastated but softened, hugged Emily one last time, their friendship bruised but not broken. Jake, the outsider who'd become the confidant, realized he'd been given a gift, a chance to see love in all its messy, beautiful truth, to let go of his own walls and maybe, just maybe, open his heart again. You're feeling the closure, aren't you? The way this wedding, this chaos, has led to a moment of raw, human connection that's both heartbreaking and hopeful. But here's the final twist, the one that'll leave you stunned. As Emily climbed into Luca's car, ready to drive into her new life, Jake noticed something tucked into his camera bag, a second note, written in Emily's hand, that he hadn't seen before. It read, "You're more than a photographer, Jake. Don't be afraid to live your own story." With it was a Polaroid she'd taken of him during the wedding, laughing, unguarded, alive in a way he hadn't seen himself in years. The twist wasn't just Emily's escape or Ryan's grace. It was Jake's transformation, sparked by a bride who saw him when he thought he was invisible. That Polaroid, that note, became his turning point, pushing him to leave Maplewood not as the guy behind the lens, but as someone ready to chase his own dreams, maybe even love, again. Months later, Jake started sharing his photos online, telling stories of the people he captured, and his work went viral, trending on YouTube with hashtags like #weddingdrama and #lovestories. He never saw Emily again, but her courage became his North Star, a reminder that life's too short to hide from what sets your soul on fire. You're smiling now, I bet, feeling the weight of this ending, the way it ties up the subplots, Sarah's loyalty, Ryan's heartbreak, Maplewood's gossip, and leaves you with a takeaway that hits home. Love, in all its forms, is worth the risk. So, what's your story gonna be? Hit that like button, share this video, and let's keep chasing the moments that make us feel alive.